project. And say, I'm going to start with you because we have the DOJ lawsuit challenging Georgia's new elections laws. How does this change the contours of your organizing?
It doesn't at all. This was contemplated as a part of our overall plan to win. Right. So it's always been about a litigation strategy, communications, making sure that we're talking directly to Americans about what's at stake and how to get involved. It has been technology and culture that we leverage, recruiting artists and entertainers and influencers. This is an all hands on deck effort. And so we welcome the Attorney General and the DOJ to the fight. But yes, it was contemplated as a part of a let's throw everything at the wall and see what sticks in our effort to defend our democracy.
And then say, I don't want to throw any cold water on that enthusiasm, but my sense, and I want to hear from you, is that this is an uphill battle.
For sure. I mean, we're talking about, this week we've celebrated or acknowledged or commemorated the 8th anniversary of Shelby versus Holder, right? Supreme Court case that kicked the teeth out of the Voting Rights Act, particularly Sections 4 and Sections 5, which Merrick Garland, AG Garland, acknowledged in his press conference on Friday. Had that provision still been the law of the land, Senate Bill 202 would have never passed. Because what it says is jurisdictions with a history of discrimination, when they want to make changes to their voting laws, have to prove to the Department of Justice that they don't discriminate. There's nothing but discriminatory language in Georgia's anti-voting bill, and it would have never passed. And so I say all of that to say that it absolutely is an uphill battle, and the right to vote is preservative of all of the other rights that we enjoy. And so it is absolutely worth it.
Christina, this, of course, isn't just happening in Georgia. The AG signaled the Justice Department is going to review other elections laws passed in other states. That, of course, comes as Texas lawmakers are going to return for a special session next month as Republicans push to limit ballot access there. Your sense of the next move for Texas Democrats in their fight?
Well, we know we have our special session coming up. We are incredibly proud that our Democratic delegation walked out of the last legislative session. So that's why they're forcing this special session. We're going to continue to see activists, organizers, and Democratic legislators fight tooth and nail so that this legislation is not passed. But if it is passed, we are going to double down on our efforts in organizing in the biggest battleground state in the country, because ultimately what Republicans are afraid of is a changing demographic, a changing country. And at the same time, we're going to unite with folks in Georgia and every state across this country and push for federal legislation and action to enshrine and protect the right of every single American to vote. Nsé and I are both women of color in the South, and it is not lost on us that it took federal action to protect our right to vote historically, and that we will need federal action again to protect our right to vote today.
Christina, I was also struck to your point about demographic change, about the fact that DOJ made that very plain and very clear in their remarks. Ezra, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki discussed the challenges of passing federal voting rights legislation yesterday. I want you to take a listen.
Does the White House see the Justice Department as its only real way of going on offense against some of these sweeping efforts across the country to implement voting restrictions, that as opposed to legislation, right?
No, we don't. We are going to continue to fight for, battle for, work toward federal legislation. I know it does not seem easy at this time. Hard things, we do hard things. That's what we do here. But we're also going to continue to engage, and this is as it relates to an earlier question, with local activists, with local legislators. You've seen the vice president do a bit of this, engage with and work with them. We're going to fight this fight on many fronts.
So, Ezra, when we talk about fighting the fight on many fronts, your group, Indivisible, is all about grassroots organizing at the local level. What tools are voters deploying to ramp up pressure for the federal legislation to protect voting rights that Psaki was talking about there?
Yeah, the best tool of them all. The best tool of them all, Alicia, and that is constituent power. We have this basic understanding of how our representative democracy works, which is every single morning, every senator, every representative wakes up thinking, how am I going to get reelected? And the answer to that question is, I've got to make my constituents, the folks back home, think I'm one of the good ones. I'm one of the good people in Congress. And so by organizing locally, focusing on your own two senators and saying, hey, I expect you to represent me. Don't represent Fox News. Don't represent Breitbart. Don't water down proposals. Don't shy away from hard fights. Pass this bill. By passing that message on to these senators during the July 4th recess, which is coming up, by passing that message on loudly and clearly, we can force them to actually take up the bill and pass it. It's up to them to pass it. It's up to us to make them pass it.
And say it is very clear that what is happening in Georgia is about black voters and other voters of color. They are the ones who are being specifically targeted. What does it tell you that Republicans, instead of putting together a strategy to actually reach out to those voters and offer them something that would get them to show up at the polls, have decided instead to restrict their right to vote?
It tells me that in the marketplace of ideas, fewer and fewer people are buying what the Republicans are selling. And they are demonstrating not only that they are afraid in this moment, but that they are absolutely clear that the only way for them to continue to hold on to power is to cheat. Is to, as you said earlier, take a sledgehammer to our elections infrastructure, to our democracy. Listen, Georgia is rapidly careening towards this multiracial, multi-ethnic, multilingual progressive majority that's been written about. We're talking about 2024, 2025. That's around the corner. So if anyone has ever had a coworker that was about to get fired, or a partner that knew that they were about to get dumped, and you saw the bad behavior as they knew what the writing was on the wall, that's what we're seeing in this moment. All of the desperation, that is what we're seeing in this moment.